Hello, beautiful people. It's the Hope Desk for November. And I'm Kimberly Dark, and I'm a writer and sociologist and storyteller. And I have some simple answers for you about some of your questions on social inequality. I just want to remind you, I don't have all the answers. I don't have the only right answers, but I'll spend up to an hour each time we're here doing what I can to address a few issues that folks have told me that they would like to know more about. Why on earth would I do this? Well, it's because, to my mind, it is hopeful if more people feel like they know enough about basic issues to be able to join public discourse about things that influence our lives. And, lots of stuff is happening. So I am not here to offer you in-depth scholarship on these topics. In most cases, other people are better qualified to do that than I am. But I do have a sociologist perspective to offer you, and sometimes that's useful stuff. So please use the chat box as we go along, and I want to thank Emily as usual for managing the stuff. I can't read the chat box at the same time, but Emily will help, and she'll also give you some resources too as we go, because I like to offer you a few of those. So hey, today we are talking about parental/family leave, which has been in the news, and I'm sure you have opinions about and know things about yourselves. And I'm going to ask you too, like, why in a country where it is a popular thing, like a bipartisan love fest, that people want some kind of parental leave, why on earth do we still avoid it? And maybe you'll have some views on that as we continue on. We're also going to talk about another topic which I have been mulling over since somebody brought it up, which is like, how do we find our power and continue to be inspired when really fab people and role models like Ruth Bader Ginsburg or John Lewis are leaving us? How do we do that? I want to remind you too that these topics come from y'all, and so sometimes a question or a theme is phrased in a way that I go, yeah, I can answer that, and we can, I can find you some resources, and that's great. Sometimes I have to really think it over, like what is actually being asked here. And so anyway, I have some ideas for you on this one today. But please also bring up new issues either in the chat box while we're here, or on social media is another place to find me, also through the website. So hey, let's talk about you've probably heard that we are one of very few countries that does not have paid parental leave. Wow, how can that be so? Now, I think that some of it has to do with the fact that we have a culture that says people should take care of themselves, but then neglects the fact that some people are more cared for already by government and business interests. And, so we just sort of don't parse that. I want to start with a story that stays with me in a big way. I was visiting a friend in Denmark. This was an academic colleague. She's a professor, and I've forgotten now what her partner did for a living. But we were talking about this situation of no paid parental leave in the United States. And she was just so baffled. She was confused. And she said a thing that has stayed with me forevermore. She said, but I don't understand. When a baby is born, it's helpless. I mean, somebody has to take care of it. Why not the parents? And this question, it seems so fundamental, right? That at the beginning of life and at the end of life, somebody has to take care of us. Literally every one of us, right? There's no sure, somebody might get hit by a truck and not need care when they're older, but definitely on the way in, definitely when you're a baby, somebody has to take care of you. And so this question about who should it be, that's a really interesting one. And what we have decided in the United States is who it should be are your immediate family members without any public support, and also, without any sense of what is the quality of care. Because if you have to hire out for someone to do that because you need to keep your job, then what is the quality of somebody else caring for your child? Well, we don't really pay much attention to that either. So we've got a situation in the US where we've got 5 states that are offering, and the District of Columbia and DC are offering some form of paid leave. And I'm going to comment in a moment how it's nothing like the countries that do the best at this in the world. So yeah, I also want to point out that this ideal that we have about women staying home and taking care of children and not being part of the workforce, that a man's income is supposed to cover the family, that has not been true for a very long time. And in fact, men and women have been in the workforce in equal numbers for a number of years now, right? So like we don't even have this circumstance anymore where middle class and upper class women are expected to stay home, because of course working class women always worked in addition to having children. So there was a recent poll that was done. MSN polls its readers, and then they use a machine learning model to see how a representative sample in the US would have responded using big data like the census. So it's not just a little survey, right? So interestingly, what they found is that this is not actually a partisan issue. So check it out. Like 96% of Democrats say mothers should get paid leave. 96% is that's a really lot, and 88% of Republicans agree. That's also a really lot. So when it comes to paternity leave, you might guess that 93% of Democrats thinks fathers should have it, but only 77% of Republicans agree. This is still a really lot. Something that comes in at 77% approval rate is still a lot. And similarly, for adoptive parents, 94% of Democrats, 81% of Republicans concur. So the divide is not huge between Republicans and Democrats on who should have this kind of leave. California is one of the states that is a current standard bearer among the ones that do provide leave in the United States. Others include New Jersey and Washington, and they have slightly different models for this. I happen to be sitting in front of the Golden Gate Bridge today. I'm going to just tell you about California. So this is it's called paid family leave, PFL, and it provides benefit payments to people who need to take time off of work to care for a seriously ill family member, or to, bond with a young child, or to participate in some qualifying event because of a family member's military deployment. That's another thing that paid family leave covers in California. So, if you're eligible, you receive benefit payments for up to 8 weeks. And payments can be 60 to 70% of your weekly wages. And that's based on your earnings like a year to a year and a half before your claim starts. And so PFL in California provides these benefit payments, but it doesn't provide job protection. Job protection may be protected by other laws like the Family and Medical Leave Act or the California Family Rights Act. So, when you think about like what kind of difference this might make for families, it's tremendous, because we have minimum wage set at such a low rate that it is very hard for people to keep working and pay for childcare at the same time, right? Because if you're a minimum wage earner, chances are you're paying another minimum wage earner about the same amount that you're making in order to receive those those childcare benefits. There are other ways that our country tries to support new mothers. Food stamps is one of them, if you qualify for that, and also WIC, which is, it's supplemental nutrition for women, infants, and children. I just want to say, I received WIC benefits when my son was an infant. This was 31 years ago. And my income was low enough to receive that benefit, but the number of people that are able to receive those benefits has been dropping and dropping and dropping since I received them. So, it's possible that even at the same level of poverty, I would not have been eligible to receive those benefits. And those are, by the way, additional food benefits if the mother is nursing, or formula if the mother is not breastfeeding. Okay, so this is just an example, right, of how it goes in California, and people are, reasonably cranky pants right now that this whole family leave thing at the federal level might be, might be dropping out of the what has currently been proposed. Maybe it's already dropped out and I just didn't get the memo, but it's tricky, right? Because it would be handy to have this at a federal level. So let me just say something real quick about some other countries that are super good at this. Like the Republicans are not as excited about paternal benefits, but you know what country is? Bulgaria. Bulgaria gives the most paternal leave benefits paid for, of any country. But actually the ones that are at the top of the list in terms of these kind of leave, you might not be so surprised with. Finland. Finland is at the top of the list. Finland is not actually a Scandinavian country. It's more Hungary, Estonia. It's more associated with those folks. But Finland is usually grouped in with the Scandinavian countries in terms of social policies, because they have some really good ones. Check it out, though. Both parents are entitled to 164 days each, and you can transfer some of that to the other parent if you want to do that. And these are paid at 70% of the employee's salary. So for the remaining weeks, then, if you take more, then it might still be unpaid leave, but you're not going to be fired. So despite the generous leave allowances, fathers in Finland generally do not use their allotments. So there still is kind of a gender imbalance in who's caring for children, but the benefits are there. Hey, Germany is another really good one. I just want to point out, these are capitalist countries. We're not talking about, okay, socialist, capitalist. I mean, I don't know, how are you going to define these things? How are you going to define these things? It's worth conversation, because we're not talking about countries that are trying to equalize income for everyone. That's not it. We're talking about countries that have, Germany for sure has, capitalism at its base, but they have some of the most generous parental leave laws in the world. And they are better at bridging the gender gap than Finland is generally as well. So employees are entitled to take parental leave for a natural or adopted child, and you can request up to 3 years of parental leave. And that can be claimed by both parents at the same time or separately. So employees can also work during their parental leave up to 30 hours a week. And so, there is some possibility for actually tailoring your family care experience. And wouldn't that be handy too? Because, I don't know about y'all, but I mean, it's tiring, whether you're looking after an infant or whether you're looking after an old person, to do that all the time and leave your own work 4 years at a time. So the ability to tailor that experience is one of the things Germany really has going for it. And they are compensating at 67% of the employee's average monthly income for up to 3 years, right? Like, this is astonishing when you think about it in comparison to the US. That's up to 1,800 euros, but not less than 300 euros. And if employees have 2 children under the age of 3, then, you know, there's another formula for that. So it's pretty amazing, right? I'm not going to talk about all of these, but Iceland's pretty cool, and they have actually a really simple scheme. Norway is also pretty cool. Those are countries that definitely fall into that Scandinavian socialist capitalist situation. But you know, most of these countries are thinking about, like, yeah, just like my friend in Denmark said, until the child is about 3, somebody has got to take care of it all the time. Like, how are you getting around that? Like, that's like a fact of being human. And it's a good question. How are we getting around that? And I think we could stand to have more conversations about, like, what does good care for infants and children actually mean in the United States? So I just want to pause there and let Emily give you an article about, did I just give you one article about family leave from the Atlantic, or did I give you?
You gave me 2. I see the one from the
2.
Atlantic.
Oh, okay.
And
But the other one is from Yes, right? We
correct.
haven't talked about that yet. So don't share that yet. Let it be a surprise.
Surprise is my middle name.
The one from the Atlantic, though, really focuses on things that people say when they oppose family leave, because I think that's worth discussing. Like, how do we talk about those arguments in a civil and useful way? So can I just pause for a moment and see if anybody has questions or comments or things that you might like to? I got a couple wows in the chat box. Wow, indeed. Anything you want to bring up?
Are we good to unmute and just talk?
You can unmute and talk.
I normally type all this in, but I'm on my phone today. I just read a really interesting article about the development of the polyvagal system, especially in early childhood, and when that there isn't kind of constant co-regulation, that part of the nervous system doesn't develop very well, and we end up with individuals with a very diminished level of resilience later in life. And I just have this curiosity of sort of like how off, like how many people with screws loose are loose because they weren't cared for as well in really early development.
It's an interesting question, isn't it? It's a really interesting question. And you know what it prompts me to think about too is, you know, there have been a few different theorists who have floated this idea that we actually have in the United States a caste system that is, you could talk about that in terms of race, as Isabel Wilkerson has done, but you can also talk about it in terms of poverty, and that the kind of poverty that we have in the United States is not just about income differences. It's also about access to care, and the idea being that the sort of thing that you're just mentioning there, about how resilient we become, that really an underclass is being bred to stay an underclass, right? That the idea being that, no, you're not supposed to be healthy. You're not supposed to ever have dental care. You're not supposed to ever have, you know, this kind of high quality parenting standards that first world folks expect. So, you know, that's a tragedy, but it's worth looking into as well if you're interested in thinking about how we create not just an underclass, but a poverty caste that will stay poor across generations. I appreciate that. Now, do any of you, can any of you think of a time or a way that you might talk about parental leave, or have you already been having conversations with others about parental leave? Because it's been in the news a lot. And you don't have to have an answer, of course, but I just like to ask the question.
Hey, Kimberly, I find this topic interesting because 30 years ago when I had my first child, I was so excited because FMLA had just passed and I could at least take the time off without worry. And was fortunate enough to be able to afford 6 weeks away. And then my husband at the time, he could afford to take 6 weeks away. So between the two of us, our child did have 3 months at home with a parent. But hearing this concept of paid leave for as much as, like, I think you said 162 weeks in Finland is like, whoa, that's just inconceivable to me compared to what was going on. I mean, the last thing, it's enough to have a new child and worry about it and just make that leap into parenting. Then you're worrying about money. That at least takes that pain away. That's fantastic. And I mean, again, I was fortunate enough that we could afford the situation we're in. I can't imagine for someone who's really living paycheck to paycheck before a child shows up, then having to deal with these situations.
Yeah. It's astonishing. It's astonishing the position that people find themselves in as new parents and as people caring for aging adults as well. That's another like giant unknown. Like, how are you going to pay for the care for an aging parent in this situation? I will just share also that I was a person that my son's father and I, at the time, we were like, our aim was that one of us was with him until he was 2, until he reached, well, his first year and his second year, until he reached his 3rd birthday. And we were, look, I want to be clear, we were 2 white people with college degrees when we had that baby. Like, we were poised for employment. We were on our way into the workforce. And so with no expectation of any kind of public support, of course, for my mind, the task was, how do we figure out how to live on one income during this time? And so, we figured out how to live smaller and to share one car, and to, we just sort of micro-sized everything about our lives. And we also got support from grandparents who were capable to give it. And that is another piece, in addition to being white and college educated and ready to go, that not everyone has access to grandparents who can financially help as well. And by financially, I don't mean, like, it's a big help if, at Christmas or something, grandparents can buy a new crib, like a big ticket item, even if it's not like regular monthly support. That is a very different thing than grandparents being able to offer a small toy at a holiday. All right, I want to move on to the second topic, which I hope we will all find more cheerful. So I got this question, months ago, and I've been mulling it over about, right after Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, I suppose somebody put forth this question about how do we find our power when people like her are dying? Here's my answer to that. I would love it if we would think more often about how we keep our inspiration going and how we specifically connect with people who are already doing work about things we care about. So here's the framework that I would like to offer you for this. And I probably will write a short article about this because I think it's worthwhile. So I'm kind of thinking in terms of three types of people that I think that we should consciously connect with. One of them I'm going to call beacons. These are people who influence our thinking, influence the way that we frame things. So for instance, if I am thinking about people who are living and writing today that I think of as beacons in terms of the stuff that I care about, I would come up with somebody like Bell Hooks or Audre Lorde. And my suggestion is that we have to find folks who are beacons for the kind of thinking and action that we want, and read those people. Read them a lot. Look up their talks online. Stay connected with those kind of folks. Now, there are loads more folks who I consider beacons in my own thinking. People like Audre Lorde or Thich Nhat Hanh or the philosopher Gramsci. I mean, these are folks who have influenced my way of thinking too, but they're also already passed on. They're not still producing. So my suggestion is to find beacons who are still producing in real time, because they are responding to the culture that you are actually living in right now. And I think that's valuable. So that's one type of person to stay connected to, are beacons. And I think that really, John Lewis and Ruth Bader Ginsburg were examples of beacons, people that were definitely working, right? Both of those folks were working in our political system, but they were also offering more than just their labor day to day. They were offering inspiration in another way. I think we also need a second group of folks, and those are implementers, the people who are actually out doing the stuff. So, Emily, if you could share the other two little articles. These are just, there's nothing special about these articles, but they are examples of articles about people who are doing things. So I think, I can't even remember what I've given you. Is one about Haitian refugees maybe, and then
let's see.
Another one is
Yes Magazine.
Yeah.
I mushed them together. Hold please while I unmush.
Oh no, I didn't give you the Haitian refugee one. I gave you one about farming after prison. Yeah. And that is an example of, hey, sustainable farming. Hey, life after prison. Like, what are people doing? What are people actually doing? Yes Magazine, if you don't know about it already, is a great resource for what are people actually doing, not just what's going wrong in the world. So I think we need to connect with people who are implementers. And most of the articles in Yes Magazine focus on implementers. So check it out. Implementers are sometimes going to be your peers, and they're sometimes going to be, beacons for you as well. They're going to be people that who are mentors, who are role models. So for instance, in the kind of work that I do and the topics that interest me, I would think of people like my friend Sonia Renee Taylor as an implementer and a peer. Aubrey Gordon also writes books about, fat, wonderful stuff. Like, these are both writers and thinkers that I think highly of, and I am in a milieu with those folks, right? So they are implementers who are peers. I also can think of people who are implementers who are mentors to me. I am not their peer. For instance, I take a Hawaiian language and culture class. My teacher in that class is an implementer, and I am a learner. I am not a peer, right? So I think that we can find these folks in both categories, but implementers are really important to find. The third group of folks that I think we ought to seek out in order to not burn out and not lose our compass and all of that with the stuff that is important to us. That third group of folks are allies in learning. So allies in learning are peers. They're people that you are learning with. So I mentioned that Hawaiian language and culture class. The other people in the class with me are my allies in learning. Those are the folks that I call when like I don't understand what's being asked of me by the teacher, or I'm trying to work through something that we experienced together and I want to talk some more about it. You know, the people that you have a margarita and like have a whole conversation about like what is happening with this stuff we are learning. I think it's super powerful to surround ourselves with at least the words and teachings of beacons, but also the company of implementers, the company of allies in learning. And so how do you do this? So the beacons, it's easy. You buy their books, you read their stuff, you look them up online. And, you know, we live in a time when, my gosh, so much is available to us on the computer. But the other two levels, hey, do you go to conferences? So there are gatherings of people, and some of them have been online, but a lot of them are starting to happen in person again. I think that it is really important to breathe the same air of the implementers and beacons that we respect. Go to book signing events, go to conferences, go to you know, I don't know, the big sustainable gardening event, if that's your interest, right? Every once in a while, go to these things, because that's where you're going to find in real time implementers and allies in learning. If academic work is your thing, pick an academic conference or two where you are going. And a lot of times those conferences are set up so that the keynotes are your beacon people, and you know the implementers are in there too, and there's folks that are coming up, and you don't have to agree with everybody. I mean, it's wonderful if you don't, but this is the place to find peers, whether they are peers that are implementing stuff, you know, because that allows you to take your place too and to give your gifts to the people who need them, while you also are a learner in other ways. Yeah. So this is my answer to this question, that we find inspiration from the beacons, the implementers, and the allies in learning, and that we take our role seriously, you know, when it comes to being part of that. And I think that, you know, especially when you get to a place where, like when I was thinking through like some of my people that whose work has been really important to me, the older I get, the more of them are dying. And that's how this goes. Yeah. So I think we can get to a place in our 40s and 50s where it feels like, well, what do I do? Well, you're now somebody else's model implementer. So get busy with it, but then also pay attention to how you find allies in learning still as well. And I think that might be a helpful answer to that question, but it certainly could use some more conversation, couldn't it? So I'm just wondering if anyone has comments or questions about this. And I would also love it if can you think of some of your own beacons? Maybe put those in the chat as well. I mentioned Audre Lorde and Bell Hooks and Angela Davis. You know, yours might be writers too, or they might be musicians, or they might be filmmakers, or I don't know, if you want to put some of these folks in the chat, that would be inspiring to others. Is this something you all think about and talk about with each other? Where might you talk about being inspired? Oh, in the chat, I'm getting some Resma Menachem, I'm getting some Rebecca Solnit and Sabrina Strings, and me. Thanks. And yeah, these are wonderful, wonderful. I love Rebecca Solnit's work as well, and Resma Menachem, Sabrina Strings, beautiful.
I recently started a new job and I'm like fully remote, and I'm not struggling, but curious about how I'm going to participate in all the diversity, equity, and inclusion stuff, you know, while I sit in my house.
Yeah.
The culture is amazing and incredible. And it kind of, and so one of the things that I did was I put my pronouns as she, they on my Zoom and all my online stuff. And so that actually, I think, is like a really powerful way for me to participate without, you know, like without spending more time on our Slack and just doing like sort of social media, but for work.
Yeah.
That just feels like sort of draining and, you know, not how I want to spend my time and energy right now. But there's like a lot of really good cultural things in my company that are enforced and reinforced, like pronouns, and just there's a thing where whenever someone says you guys, someone might reference the you guys jar, where you have to put $1 in the you guys jar when you say you guys instead
I
of
love it.
folks or whatever. So, you know, like people are working with the reality and constraints of the form through which we are co-working, and like it's pretty interesting just to sort of be really a part of that, and to see how the culture, like it has to be from the top down. You know, in this case, I'm working for like a very quickly growing tech company that actually I'm not waiting for the next douchebag to humiliate me. Inadvertent, you know, workplace humiliation.
Yeah.
Feels good.
Yeah. So this is great. And, you know, I love that you're bringing up organization.
I'm just going to turn off my video. Thanks.
Yeah. I love that you're bringing up organizational culture, because, you know, this is what we are participating in creating when we start to give ourselves frameworks for discussing these things. That, you know, this is how culture at work happens. So that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Got a few more people in the chat. AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Brene Brown. Very nice. Very nice. Anything else anybody has to say about any of this that we have talked about today? All right. Well, that is what I have for you this time. We will have 2 new topics next month in December. And please do keep bringing the topics forward. I appreciate it a great deal. I'll see y'all later. Thanks, Emily, too, for your help.